care about the people they represent. He went on to say, never lie, and be the person that cares and associate with those like-minded people. I took his words and wisdom to heart, and they've served me well over the many years in my elected positions. So I come here tonight with great disappointment and sadness, understanding that parents' genuine concerns that don't fall in line with the alleged political leanings of some of those in the Reentry and Pandemic Response Committee will not be tolerated. This was quite evident during last Thursday's Zoom Pandemic Response Committee meeting for SAU 9, where several outwardly biased members verbalized that they really thought about the parents engaging the committee meeting. What were the comments? Well, Mr. Lentini completely disregarded the concerns of many parents and said, you know, we don't have to listen to these people. They're making it political. Which was also agreed to by school nurse Helen Crowell. She said, yeah, we shouldn't be listening to these people. They're crazies. Yes, look behind me. These are the crazies that Mr. Lentini and Ms. Crowell believes shouldn't be listened to, should be marginalized and diminished. If these crazies are the moms and dads that love, support, and cherish their children, I'm proud to be associated with them, and I stand strong with these crazies. All we hear is follow the science, follow the science, follow the science. And that's what Helen Crowell said the other night. The same science that brought us chemical and biological weapons that kill innocent people. Some of these biological and chemical weapons, they make you drown in your own blood that you vomit on. This is the same science that brought you massively destructive devices such as nuclear weapons that cause your skin to peel off if you unluckily happen to be close enough to the blast. Science has brought us DDT, lead paint, leaded gasoline, asbestos, swine flu vaccines, syncytial respiratory virus vaccines, dengue fever vaccines that have all failed. I challenge you to prove me wrong. The damage has been done. The trust that we had for you and these purported professionals is now gone after that Pandemic Response Committee meeting the other night. As parents, the crazies, are supposed to trust the people now to make the right decisions for our children? Who is the Pandemic Response Committee? It comprises of school employees, school board members, school nurses, a couple of local doctors, and no parents not affiliated with either of these groups. Keep the circle tight. We don't let the crazies in. What's even more disappointing was that nobody, including Mr. Richard, stepped in and opposed the attacks of the committee members against the parents the other night until I spoke out and I was challenged by another member who wrongly believed I was calling them out personally. Yes, one member was more worried about my rebuttal than the initial attack on the innocent but concerned parents. Acquiescence by silence. You know what that means? It means no one spoke up, so they must have agreed with the attacks. If I was a Bartlett or Jackson resident right now, I'd be advocating for the termination of Nurse Crowell. It's obvious what she thinks of concerned parents' opinions, but since I'm speaking in front of the board tonight, I would urge Ms. Crowell to resign from her position and in the committee position. She doesn't belong there. Mr. Lentini also publicly displayed his attitude, stating we are making this, quote, political. This isn't political. We never talked about politics. Maybe it's politics for you, but I don't. What I see is Mr. Lentini is a political animal that wants to exert his power over our children in a political theater of tug-of-war with the parents. It is obvious that Lentini thinks that the parents addressing their concerns, he doesn't want to hear from them. Perhaps the voters' economy will decide his fate in the next election. If Mr. Lentini, in light of the recent incident, I would be resigning my pandemic response position and school board position. I would have to question, why are you, Mr. Lentini, doing this work? If you don't want to hear from us, is it to fulfill your own ego? Because it surely doesn't look like you're interested in your constituents' opinions. You made it very clear on the call the other night. Also, Mr. Lentini is on the committee that makes the same recommendations that he'll be voting on. That sounds a bit like a conflict of interest to me. And should recuse himself from the voting. Kind of like the judge judging on her own case. With that being said, I also understand that there are those in the Reentry Committee that are sincere in your beliefs, and I believe that, and your motives, and do care about what happens with our children. but may have been receiving confusing and contradictory information from the same committee health advisors, the CDC and Dr. Fauci. Most of you probably don't have a science background. A bunch of the information can be very confusing, I get it. But you see the division that's already occurring. It's the crazy crowd versus the follow the science, but not crazy crowd. But I'll get to that in a little bit. Remember, what Fauci and the CDC said to us: masks don't work. No, they do work. No, you need two. No, wait. If you don't need them because you're vaccinated. Oh no, you need them again, even if you are vaccinated. I don't blame you for being confused. Does any of this making sense to you? Despite sending studies and my concerns, I can't seem to get a healthcare professional advisor on the Pandemic Response Committee to explain to me why years of studies that show masks cannot prevent infection. I have pointed them to articles on emerging infectious disease on the CDC website. Now that examines combined studies over many years and states that masks are basically worthless against influenza. It's right here. But somehow, it's magically effective against coronavirus. They have known this for years, that masks didn't stop viruses. This is why they never prescribed them. This is a fact. The fear is the mask. It's fear, 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 and more fear. In fact, the more fear, the better. The more that we can get people to submit to fear and give up theirs and their children's liberties and freedoms, wear a worthless mask and take yet another experimental vaccine, the better. If you want a vaccine, take it. You have a freedom of choice. Vaccines equal dollars, and lots of them. Billions of dollars, with absolutely no liability to the pharmaceutical companies. Anybody aware of that? What a business model. Produce a product, it may not work, it may work, it may be dangerous, it may kill you, with no possibility of being sued. We need to wake up. The fact that corporation worship has brought us to this point in history where government works with big tech, big pharma, big banks, and big corporations to crush your individual liberties. Crush you into submission and leave you without recourse with the help of willing and unknowing participants such as yourselves. Considering these facts, when you decide to add another level of control over our children by forcing them to wear a mask, you are playing into their trap. In fact, Moderna has never made a successful vaccination in short 10-year lifespan, but somehow has generated $40 billion in revenue in a vaccine that was developed in 2 days. And now says you'll need a third booster and perhaps one every 6 months. That's up to you. It's your freedom of choice. Fear, 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 and more fear. They're using us as pawns in their scheme to make billions and voluntarily give up our freedoms and liberties. The masks are part of the fear despite a 99.98% survival rate of a virus that's so deadly that a Chinese-made cloth mask from the dollar store will somehow protect our children. Does this make any sense at all? Have we lost our collective minds? Speaking of collective minds, has anyone ever heard of Stanley Milgram and the authority figure experiments? Milgram was a Yale University professor that developed studies on how far people would go to potentially killing another person with electric shocks under the pressure of authority. This experiment was born out of the question whether German people were somehow naturally cruel or were they just following orders when they executed millions of Jewish men, women, and children in gas chambers and firing squads, later to be bulldozed into mass pits or burned in ovens. These are the facts. They aren't pretty. And those that committed the atrocities simply said they were following, quote, orders. Orders from those of authority. The German campaign began slowly, through propaganda by demeaning the Jews and subsequently separating them from the rest of society both physically and psychologically, making them wear the Star of David and putting them in ghettos. They propagated at the times the Jewish people were the root of their economic problems in Germany. The Germans eventually came to blame the Jewish people for their never-ending war reparations and hyperinflation. Eventually they were gassed, shot, and burned. 6 million Jewish people. But how did they do it? How could you get so many people to commit such heinous atrocities? It didn't happen overnight. It was an incremental process. Let me explain. Professor Milgram measured the willingness of study participants, all men from diverse range of occupations with varying levels of education, to obey an authority figure who instructed them to perform acts conflicting to their personal conscience. Participants were led to believe that they were assisting in an unrelated experiment in which they had to administer electrical shocks to a learner. The electrical shocks gradually increased to a level that would have been fatal if they had been real. The experiment found unexpectedly that a very high proportion of subjects would fully obey the instructions, and however reluctantly, which had most likely killed the subject if real electricity had been used. I'm sure you're asking yourself, what the heck is this point? Well, today, we have been told by authority figures we have a pandemic despite the 99.98% survival rate, and we must mask up, take vaccinations, close our businesses, socially distance, quarantine, mask ourselves and our kids, keep them locked up in one room, restrict their movements, restrict their eating, restrict their interactions with other students, walk this way but not that way, mask up when playing sports and when outside, etc., etc. Now we're being told those that don't mask up or take the vaccination are to blame for the new cases. Vaccine passports are being rolled out, so you'll only have the privilege to go to a restaurant, a ball game, or other event if you can prove you had the jab. Sounds like the unvaccinated will have their own lunch counters and water fountains, just like the blacks in the South. Many are even advocating that unvaccinated should be arrested. However, the last survey sent out by the district, which asked whether children were vaccinated, why do they need to know this information? Isn't there a right to medical privacy? Where have we gotten into in this country when fellow Americans are advocating that we institute segregation based on masks and vaccines? The lines have been drawn in the sand. If you are a mask optional, you're crazy. We heard it. We already have witnessed that. If you follow the science, no matter how flawed, it's the gospel. Divide and conquer. Like I said, the division has already occurred. Jews and Germans, blacks and whites, maskers and anti-maskers, vaccinated and non-vaccinated. This was clearly on display at the Zoom meeting. Don't question anything. Follow the science professionals. Does any of this have similarities to what I just told you? Have we become subjects in a Milgram-like experiment to see how far those will obey the dictates of authority, no matter how bad it conflicts with our conscience? We're at a crossroads of history right now. It's being written as we sit here tonight, and you, all of you, will write it. The question becomes, which side of history will you be on? What legacy will you leave for your family and others to read and talk about? None of us are getting out of this alive with these bodies. We're all going to succumb to something. Chances are better than not that it'll be a heart attack, cancer, flu, old age, or maybe, yes, even COVID. The question that will be asked is, what side were you on? Did you advocate for freedom, liberty, and choice to the next generation? Or by forcing a group of young people to submit to unproven medical experiments dictated from authority figures that do not know us and do not care about us and will further enslave us and our children and teach them that they are pawns to be manipulated? I don't completely agree that many of us have lost our ability to critically think. I think all of you have that ability. I think what everybody is suffering from is authority syndrome. And I don't think that there's any information, medical study, or position that any of us purported crazy could present to this committee and certain members of the school board, such as Mr. Lentini, that would change their minds. Because they are bent on mass indoctrination in what appears to be an act of control over our children, using them as pawns in a game of control, absent a state of emergency, when not one child in the state of New Hampshire has died from COVID. Also, I recently learned that parents' letters of concerns and attached medical studies that were instructed to be sent to Mr. Richard have been filed away, not to be seen or examined by the health advisors on the committee. As we plainly heard, why should we listen to us? Why should they listen to us? We're the crazies. And those that made the comments are the brilliant minds that we should never question, and when we do, we're condemned and ridiculed. How have we gotten to this place in America, honestly? Think about it. In our community, when those with perceived power refuse to be questioned. In any event, I frankly cannot understand how any of the practicing doctors on the Pandemic Response Committee, working in extremely busy practices, can make time to critically study and examine any of the other medical information that we've presented in many, many papers to them, and I've presented personally, have time outside other than to get their direction from the CDC, the NHDHS, and Fauci. I'll bring up another issue, and that's my son will come forward and speak briefly on his own behalf. He was written up for not having a mask over his nose, despite his complaints of not feeling well and feeling lightheaded. The initial response to the incident from the school was, quote, "We have to enforce the rules," end quote. And Mr. Beachy stated that the discussion about masks is, quote, "not open for discussion," end quote. In an email which further instructed me to contact Mr. Superintendent Richard, which I promptly did. But recently discovered that none of what I'd sent or any of the other parents had sent was reviewed by any of the committee members. What is missing from this narrative? Did anybody ask themselves that? Nobody asked themselves if you needed to break from the mask. Only that the rules needed to be enforced. That's all that mattered. In fact, the mask breaks that were promised and supposed to be to give our son and other students relief were basically only effectuated during the times when they eat. Very convenient for staff, but to the detriment of the students. No student had any other choice, being cooped up all day inside one room, breathing each other's exhalations behind their useless masks that have clear warnings and disclaimers on the boxes that state they are not to be used for, quote, antimicrobial or antiviral protection or for infection prevention or reduction. It says it right here on every mask box. Am I missing something here? I just sat through several pandemic response committee meetings where masks were advertised as a magic to slow or stop the virus. But wait a minute, the mask manufacturer says it's not to be used for the prevention and reduction of infection. Again, am I missing something here? Perhaps one of the healthcare professionals that has not answered me could enlighten me as to the apparent contradiction. I've already sent numerous studies to several healthcare professionals on the Pandemic Response Committee, including my own representative, Dr. Knurr. But the silence is deafening, I gotta tell you. Look, cigarette packages say that smoking could cause cancer, but using the same logic, mask manufacturers say they don't prevent or reduce infection. Maybe we should start smoking, but wear a mask to protect us from the virus, because the warning really doesn't mean what it says. Speaking of masking, are there any reasons why the warnings are on the mask boxes? Have you ever asked yourself that? It's not because they're authorized to be used under the emergency use authorization, but it still does not absolve the manufacturers from warning the purchaser under federal law that they have not been proving and reducing the transmission of viruses and bacteria because they are considered a medical device. You see, they cannot make false claims as to the efficiency to protect you against viruses and bacteria. The law requires informed consent. Despite the warnings, SCU United is mandating masks and has failed to warn the parents and students that the masks have warnings that the efficiency of the mask has not been approved for antimicrobial or antiviral protection or for the infection prevention or reduction thereof. Potentially there's a liability issue here if somebody decides they want to push it. Seems simple enough, doesn't it? So why are we mandating prophylactic devices when we are told they don't provide the protection? Perhaps I'm the one that's not thinking hard enough into this esoteric meaning of the English language, and perhaps one of the committee healthcare professionals can enlighten me, but they won't answer me. We're at a crossroads of history right now in this country, in this community. The question is, what will be your legacy, and how will you be remembered? The ones that stood up in the face of medical tyranny, or one of the cowards with the excuse that I was just following orders?
Amen.
The choice is yours.
Amen.
Is there anybody else?
Yep.
And you have something new to add?
Donnie would like to add something about his experience.
Wow. You heard that, right? No, that was me.
Hello, my name is Daniel Clifford, and I'm going into 9th grade at Kemet. I love to play hockey, football, and lacrosse, and enjoy learning new things in school. I went back into class learning in January, but it was not enjoyable. I was told to put a mask over my nose. However, there were times I was just trying to get a breath of fresh air. I didn't feel well. I was written up for trying to breathe. I wish I had more mask breaks because we had to sit in the same room all day, and we never got to talk or mix with other students or friends. Our only mask breaks were when we ate at our desks in the room we were in day after day. The room many times would be very hot and stuffy, and we had to wear the masks which were extremely uncomfortable. We had a fan to cool things off, but I was told that we couldn't run it because it would cause COVID to spread.
Jeez.
I miss being normal and talking to my friends at lunch and other times, which has been taken away from us. Last summer, in the middle of the pandemic, and this summer, I have been at the beach next to our house, where men, women, and children of all ages are in the water swimming from other places like Massachusetts, Rhode Island, Connecticut, New York. Nobody was wearing masks, and nobody was worried about it. I don't understand why can at my beach with people from all over the country all summer, but when I got back to school, I'm separated from all my friends and I have to sit in the same room all day. If you think about it, it really doesn't make any sense. Please don't force us to wear masks again. Thank you for your time.
A little demonstration. There's been a lot of questions about, and there's a study right now. There's several studies that have been given to us by physicians. I was a lab researcher at one time. I was a meteorologist. I forecasted weather. I'm an airline pilot, so I'm not oblivious to much of this information. And there's one here that talks about whether or not these masks are harmful to our children. And one of the questions is whether or not this carbon dioxide levels increase and whether the oxygen levels decrease. And there seems to be a school of thought amongst many physicians, which are being censored, that this is the case. But there are others that are saying absolutely not. Well, I just want to provide you with a little demonstration this evening. This is a carbon dioxide meter. It reads ambient carbon dioxide, relative humidity, and also the temperature. Right now, we're showing about 690 parts per million of carbon dioxide in this room, which is probably pretty normal considering the number of people in here. We have a 21.6 degrees Celsius in temperature and about 69% relative humidity. We've taken this mask and I've used it on Danya, and this is one of the things that this mask study talks about, is the dead space in the mask. We've taken the mask, and this has been done in other studies. There's normal mask that he puts in there, and we put the CO2 meter in the mask. This is what the students are every day are breathing. Right now it's starting to go up. I just want them to breathe normally. 975 parts per million. 1,100 parts per million.
This is crazy.
That's in 2
These
seconds.
masks are
1,300 parts per million.
2 seconds.
And he's not playing any sports at the moment.
He's not doing anything, he's just standing here.
I'm shaking.
Over 1,300 parts per million. 1,669 parts per million. 1,900 parts per million.
Brain damage.
That should be
2,100
concerning.
parts per million. 2,200 parts per million.
Less than a minute.
400 parts per million.
Oxygen deprivation.
2,600 parts per million. These are even beyond acceptable limits in an average room. 3,000 parts per million. 3,300 parts per million. 3,500 parts per million. How far do you think this thing's going to go?
Until he dies.
We have a doctor in the room,
Said the
don't we?
doctor.
We have an MD, don't we?
Yep.
And what I'm doing here, is this unreasonable?
You're asphyxiating the student.
That's right, 4,000 parts per million. We have kids sitting in masks all day. I don't have the data in front of me, but these kind of numbers,
I am
7,
videoing
8, 10,000 parts per million. That this meter is read over 10,000 of my son within a minute just sitting in a chair. You think this is normal?
Nope.
This isn't normal. You're asphyxiating our children with a polypropylene mask. Not to mention there's 1.6 billion of these in the ocean right now for you environmentalists. And they don't degrade 450 years from now. We're up to over 4,000 parts per million now. This isn't good. But think about it. We've only been here for what, 1 minute? He has to sit in this thing for 7 hours a day.
This is child cruelty.
That is so
It's child
freaking
abuse.
crazy.
It's child abuse.
Absolutely.
You're bringing me to freaking tears right now, guys. I have a almost 16-year-old son
Me
that
too.
sits in this high school.
Me too.
He died from a vaccination at 6 months old. The rotavirus vaccination.
It was recalled.
Yes,
It
it
has
was.
been recalled.
Yes,
It's a
doesn't
topical
lie.
thing. I have tears in my eyes. right
Studies have been done.
now. This is emotional. This is terrifying.
For sure.
Okay, one
You
at a
all
time.
have no
One
rights.
at a time, please, under public comment.
Oh, said this one, man.
I think I made my point.
You have
If
made
that,
your
didn't,
point.
if that doesn't send the message, I don't know what will. I can put the mask on any one of you. if you
Go, 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 girl.
Hello, my name is Candy Tremblay, or Candace Allen, just for your, so I have two names. I have a stepdaughter who was going to Bartlett Middle School. She's now entering high school. There were many times that she would come home and say that she was having anxiety attacks at school because of the mask. She couldn't breathe very well. When she would ask if she could take the mask off, she was told no. And she was forced to wear masks outside while separating from people, doing gym class, and she was having such a hard time breathing. She has had issues with anxiety because of these masks, and I'd like us to think about what we're doing psychologically to these kids. And when you think about when they go home and they spend time with their friends, they're not wearing masks when they go spend time with their friends. So why are we making them wear masks all day in school? It's harming them. I wanted to say that.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Hi everyone, I'm Cassie Cox, mom of four. I'm going to keep this short and sweet. I just would like to say that I was born and raised in the Valley, and a lot of you in this room had a hand in my very own education. And now, you guys are telling us as parents that we can't decide what's best for our own children when you are the one who educated a lot of our parents, and now you're telling us that we are what, not smart enough to make this decision ourselves?
Mm-hmm.
That's all. Nicole Norland, Madison. I didn't intend on speaking today, but what I just saw was terrifying. My child is coming out of Madison Elementary School and coming into this building this year. And Madison didn't mask the kids all year. They only had to wear them in the hallway. It's the only time they put on a mask. In the last 2 weeks of school, they were 100% mask optional. And it's my understanding, unfortunately, that the Conway kids didn't even get to experience that when the state recommended that they be optional because of the heat. So a lot of the schools around the whole entire state all sent out emails effective right now. You can go optional because, you know, the heat, and they were really concerned about kids. But I noticed, having read the email that went out to the staff in Conway, myself with my own slide, it didn't go out until the last child was on the bus, and they didn't even get to experience that for a minute. That's really sad. And I have to say that right now there are committees formed in every single sending town, whether or not to renew our contract in 2023. And I am going to wholeheartedly enter my comments on my town's committee because that was scary. And I'm a parent and I care about my child. And I know what's best for my child. And I would never want to make that decision for another person's child. That was scary. I couldn't imagine my daughter coming into this building with her face covered and having to sit in there all day. That's awful. That's awful. Not to mention, I would never put polypropylene in my house at all because it shouldn't be in rugs, because it off gases and can give you cancer. And now you put it on people's faces? That's terrible. It's just terrible. I just have nothing else to say, but it's super, super sad.
Anybody else?
My name's Rebecca Miller. There's a chance my daughter might be entering Conway Elementary this year. I graduated from Granite State College in Conway in 2019 with a 3.96 GPA. I've worked for professionals in this valley, I've worked retail in this valley, and I've been face to face with a lot of people over this pandemic, all types. I've been showed kindness and I have given kindness back. I took critical thinking, I took communications. My people in this valley teaching me. I know how to make decisions for myself and my family. I know how to respect other people's opinions without demeaning them. And I would appreciate it if you all took our opinions for our children's safety and health into severe consideration.
Seth Allen, I'm out of Bartlett, and I'm also a baseball coach for Kennett High School, volunteer that is. I didn't plan on speaking either. This is crazy. We're called crazy, but what's going on is crazy. I watch these kids, I volunteer my time, take time out of my business for these kids because I love doing it, right? Every kid that's out there watching and playing sports, on the baseball field, the most social distance sport you can do, still had to have a mask on. Okay, you follow the rules, that's fine. But in football, they didn't have a mask on. When they're tackling each other all over, sweating and spitting on each other, and do you think these kids, even when you as a parent might be telling them to wear that mask, they're going out on that field and that mask is down on their chin. Look at almost every picture that you see in a sports field. That mask is not being worn correctly, period, because they can't breathe with it on. We need to smarten up and do this for our kids. It is not, I'm speaking as a coach, as a parent. Both of my kids will be in Kennett this year. I grew up here my whole life too. I believe I had drafting in this class with Mr. Richardson. I know you all. And I am worried for our kids. And I don't want this fear around everyone to ruin our kids, to ruin anybody. We need to start looking out for our kids more, because that's what's going to matter in the future. We were taught, like, I don't know who it was who said it, but we were taught that as kids, and we're trying to push that now. We need to start worrying about our kids' future. And it's starting here, and it needs to change. We cannot let the government continue to lie to us, because that's all we're seeing is lies after lies after lies.
Yeah.
Amen.
Absolutely.
And that's what it is. We can't do it ourselves. And I will continue to volunteer my time and time again for these kids in this valley. That's all I want is good for them. And that's all anybody here wants. And if you want to call us crazy for it, I'm happy. I'm there. Thank you.
Anybody else?
Hi, my name is Sharon Wilson, and I live in Madison, New Hampshire. I would really actually like to ask a question. Maybe I'm kind of a newbie in following what's been going on with the school board. I'd like to ask you what the rationale and the reasoning and the actual science is that you are favoring masks for the children.
Specifically under public comment, this is not a time where we debate people about things or answer questions. This is where we listen to the community to hear what they have to say.
But it's a very simple two-sentence question, and I would appreciate it just for educating myself.
Can we make a motion for that question be answered at a later time?
Yeah.
Can you folks answer that for these parents? What's
I would
the-
also like to know, just for the record, I mean, it's just a quick question, a quick answer, sorry.
Yeah. this is why it remains public comment, because
You
it
could have
doesn't turn
recommended giving
it
her
doesn't
a
turn
way
into a
to
debate.
get that question on your agenda though, but you failed to give her an option to get her question answered. So why don't you give her an option?
You!
We're done. All you have to do is give her an option and she'll step away.
They don't read
There
they
is
don't
not
read
a
the
way
letters
to
anyway.
put
Right.
It's that on the agenda. This is if you
So
have.
I've been to board meetings, I've actually helped leadership NWV, so I know there's a way to get a question on an agenda from outside. I don't know the process, I'm asking the board, he can't be the only person on the board, do any of you know the process?
It's
Is it-
asked during
The administrator's report.
Oh, okay, so do we
A board
email
member
the
would have to
administrator?
bring that up during administrator's report. It says return to school update.
Yeah,
That would be the appropriate time.
Or on a
And-
board discussion.
okay, cool, thank you for that, that's the answer
Thank
we
you.
needed, appreciate it.
Thank you.
Okay, any more?
Hi, I'm Susan Hurdle from Madison. Is this thing on? Doesn't seem very loud. Oh, okay, channel 3. Hi, Susan Hurdle from Madison. I'll just speak really loud. As a former certified clinical medical assistant at Exeter Hospital, who walked out of my position when I was told I was asking questions above my pay grade, I would like to know who to hold responsible for the consequences of mask wearing. I would like names. I would like the medical professionals that you are talking to who are giving you their science, their opinions, their literature. I would like those names to be listed so that parents, if there are negative health repercussions on our children due to oxygen deprivation, that the parents can go to those people and they will suffer the consequences, because if anyone hurts my children, there are consequences, whether they are following the rules or not.
Amen.
No one is hurting my children. And I thank God that I live in Madison, New Hampshire, where it is currently mask optional, and there is no oxygen deprivation, brain damage, fatigue, nausea, headache, lightheadedness. But if you choose to implement a mask policy in Kennett, in SAU 9, in Conway, whatever this meeting is for, there should be O2 sensors at every desk on
Amen.
their fingers, monitoring their oxygen. Someone will answer for this, and us parents, we will not stand by. Thank you.
Anybody else?
Nella Thompson Eaton. I wasn't gonna talk, but I can't keep myself quiet. My son goes to Northeast Woodlands for various reasons. Masking the kids, like Woodlands is probably gonna follow suit with what the SAU does. Like through this entire thing, like I was on the Eaton School Board for a time. I was voted off in, I don't know, March or something of this year. There's a whole lot more that we're gonna have to address aside from masks, and some of that's gonna be critical race theory. There's a lot that we're gonna have to stand up against you guys for, so you better get used to our faces. Because
Amen.
what's going on with the kids is absolutely horrifying, and you are very smug. You have looked at everybody with like a condescending manner this entire
Absolutely.
time.
Yeah.
Sure has.
Yes, you have.
Yes, you have.
The smile.
I was just gonna get up and say the same
You're
thing.
rude,
I
man.
mean, from when he was giving his like speech, I mean, the eye rolling, the smugness, we are very concerned about what's going on in this building,
They don't
all of
wanna
the
hear
buildings
from
in
us.
our district, and you know what? We pay the taxes.
Yes.
You need
Yes.
to listen
And you
to
are
us.
elected officials.
You're listening to
Don't forget that.
Laracy. You're listening to Dr. Laracy, like, you're listening to him. He was part of your one of your doctors for your plan last year. He almost allowed my son to go blind and have a blood issue because he didn't listen to me. I'm the parent, nobody knows my child better than I do, and nobody fights for our kids like I do. I didn't have most of you because I'm 47 years old, so I know I recognize some of the faces, but I didn't have most of you. I did go to the school. I graduated from the school in 1992. I remained in the Valley. My parents had a business here. I'm a local realtor. Like, I am here not only to protect my child, but the other children of this valley. And you know what? Like, if you guys aren't gonna do it, maybe we're gonna stop paying like taxes for school. The co-op might not go through because that's a whole nother thing. Critical race theory. There's all kinds of things that you're gonna be seeing all of our faces every time that we're not liking something, so that our kids have a voice. Because you guys have an entirely different agenda than the majority of us.
Anybody else?
Yep. I wasn't gonna say anything either, but since I'm here, I agree with her because I was gonna get up and say the same thing. Oh, I'm sorry, Amanda, 8.9.Conway. North Conway. We're all here. We're not here to fight, to argue. We're here because we love our kids, and that's it. That's why we're here. You roll your eyes, you shake your head, whatever. We're the crazies. That's fine, but you just look beyond it. Do a little of your own research, and like she said, you're gonna see us because we're gonna keep fighting for our kids. That's why we're here. We love our kids.
Yeah.
Yeah, okay, what the hell?
Get it.
Give it a go.
We're all inspiring each other. I love it.
I was thinking about, what's going on. So I rolled back, what would I have done back in 1979 when I graduated, or back when I was in school? I would have gotten our students, or my fellow students together, and we would have taken our masks off, and we would not have put them on, because that's what I'm saying. I'm saying every child in this town, do not wear your mask. You don't have to wear your mask.
Amen.
So come together as one group, and you'll have the power you'll need to show these folks what they need to do. Because there's no reason why you should have to put your health at risk. I've lost a child. I've lost a lot of loss in my family. And losing a son, losing a daughter, these people, you could only imagine. If I got $1 for every time someone said that to me, I'd be a billionaire. You got parents here, they're worried about their kids. So again, I'm telling every damn family, don't listen to these people. They tell you no mask, give them this.
Yes. Yes.
Anybody else?
Well, freedom of speech.
Okay, then we're gonna go on with the rest of our agenda. Thank you.
Thank you.
Next is, I'd like a motion to open personnel, and we will then vote on them individually. Motion to open.
There is the addition of.
Yes, you've already announced. You've all seen, board members seen the addition for you now?
Good adaptation.
Okay, so, motion to open by Joe Moskowitz, seconded by Michelle. All those in, any discussion? All those in favor?